what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is the rapid recovery and how coming out of the, I mean, whether recovery is actually the right word is quite interesting, but going through the current climate we have at the moment, the economic climate and the environmental climate, and just the general situation that we find ourselves in, what it's meant for businesses and the kind of the wider world, really, the impact that it has, and then how we can recover from this, and how as businesses we can recover from it. So really what I'm going to be looking at is kind of how technology can help us come out of this situation in a better place than we were going into it, or at least as good as we can get, because it's very trying time. So just a bit about us. So as I said, Three-Sided Cube, we are a mission-led organisation, and our mission is to change millions of people's lives for the better. And the way we want to do that is through the use of technology. So technology is an incredible agent for change. If you look at all of the big step changes that have happened over human evolution, it's all come from leaps in technology, whether that's the first time a primate picked up a stick to use as a tool, all the way through to the Industrial Revolution, the printing press, the internet and mobile. All of these different step changes in technology have huge impact on the way that humans interact with the world. But the technology itself is agnostic. It doesn't care how you use it. So when the primate picks up that stick, it can choose to use it as a tool to dig around for roots and berries to feed its family, or it can go and whack someone over the head that's got some food and take that off them and keep it for itself. It doesn't. The stick itself isn't the thing that cares. It's the person wielding it that matters. So we choose to use technology for good because it has such powerful impact. So it's down to us to decide the way we want to go for that. So as I said, at Three-Sided Cube, we very much like to use it for good. And as John kind of mentioned in the intro, we've done that through a whole range of different clients that we've worked with over the past 10 years. And we started working, we've got small guys, three of us in Bournemouth, and we've grown now to, there's 40 of us. As John mentioned, we've got a couple of guys over in Seville, we've got a guy in Wales, and we've just set up our US office. So we've been on quite a journey, and that journey has come through the impact we've made. And we've got apps all over the world now. We're in 87 countries. It's been kind of translated into 55 languages, and we've got a whole range of clients from quite small guys. So a recent project we're doing is for the Child's Brain Injury Trust, which is quite a kind of a small charity based out of Reading. But we also do work for the International Federation of Red Crosses. So we're all over the globe with those guys, and the World Resource Institute. So a real mixture of clients and projects that we've worked on. And I think when way back in March, and it does seem like, it's funny how time sort of dilates, because it seems like a million years ago, but it also seems like yesterday. Way back in March when lockdown happened, we had to really think about what that was, and I'm sure you guys will as well, what the impact that was going to be on our business and on our clients' businesses, and how we could use technology to look at how we could solve some of the issues coming out of this crisis. And I think what's been really interesting, and I will touch a bit more on it a little bit later on, is exactly how much digital particularly has been really key to responding to this. Not just from like the healthcare angle, and you look at the test and trace app and things like that, and how that's being used, but really how it's helped people to stay connected, and for businesses to carry on existing. Stuff like we're doing now, this has become a really normal thing for people to be doing. Whereas although we all did a bit of video conferencing and stuff like that before, it wasn't something that we did at work all day, and certainly wasn't something where you'd organise a pub quiz on a Saturday night with your friends to do. So, you know, digital has really helped people to sort of get through this, this particular stage. And so what we looked at was a couple of different pieces. One was to look at, we were really interested. We have a campaigning arm to Three-Sided Cube called Ignite, and we were kind of really interested in how what consumers' reaction would be from a climate change perspective. So Ignite is a campaign that we run that is all about encouraging the circular economy so that we can all live a bit more sustainably. And that was running before COVID happened. And if you remember back then, climate change was the #1 kind of topic of conversation. So it was believed that it was going to be the #1 topic of the US elections, and it was the crisis that was facing the world. And so there was a lot of there was a big groundswell of opinion. Then when something like a global pandemic happens, it kind of takes a bit of a backseat to that. And so we were interested in looking at what consumers' attitudes were to sustainable living post the whole lockdown period. And what was really interesting actually was that there's still, you can see there that statistic, 89% of people were really keen to live more sustainably. And I think there was you saw a lot of stories, if you think back to it, about how the world was kind of healing, and it felt like we'd had a real glimpse of what the world could be like if people stopped driving their cars to work every day and stopped flying all around the world. You really started to see nature kind of come back a bit, and that was kind of a really interesting thing that people saw. And this is all enabled through digital connectivity and people being able to reach out to other people. So there was definitely a positive impact on the environment, and consumers were interested in that. So as I said, 89% wanted to live more sustainably, and 68% believed that technology was the thing that was going to support them in doing that. So there's this huge view that actually, the downside of us not living in quite the same way that we lived before, which was holidays every year, or driving to work, as I said, or any of those other things that we took for granted. Stopping that is very good for the environment, but how do you get round that? How do you exist in what gets called, and it's a little bit of a depressing term, but a post-contact world. So a world where you're not having physical contact with people all the time. How do you get around that? And you know what? It's going to be through the use of technology mainly. That's going to be a big help to people. So off the back of this, we started to look at, okay, well, this is kind of interesting, and all of our, we get a lot of inquiries now, and continue to, from organisations that are having to pivot the way they deliver their various different services to a more to a more digital platform, which is that's kind of what we specialise in. So what we had to do was think about, okay, so if we're doing this, businesses know they're going to have to pivot to a more digital platform. How do we do that in the fastest way possible? And we used to do a whole lot of, as I sort of said earlier, we've been around now for about 10 years. And back in the early days, and apologies for anybody out there who's kind of used to this, if you've built software and technology and stuff like that, you will be aware of agile technologies and things like minimum viable products and sprinting and all that kind of stuff. And it's a really interesting world. So it's very much a Silicon Valley kind of ethos that's come out of fail fast, go at 100 miles an hour, learn quickly, pivot and change. And that's great in any kind of early technology, any sort of nascent technologies. That's really fantastic. But what tends to happen over time is the edges of that slightly start to get knocked off a bit, and things start to slow up a bit because people expect more from a minimum viable product. And also organisations are less kind of a more risk averse. When times are good, you don't want to take as much risks because, well, you don't need to take the risk. Well, right now times aren't great, and there's going to be a lot more of that risk taking that's involved. So that I've got a few examples to take people through, to take you guys through, of a couple of products that we got out there for one of our biggest clients, and just to sort of show you the differences between the two approaches and which ones have the most success. So if we take a look at our emergency application. So this is an application we built for the American Red Cross. So if you guys don't know, the American Red Cross is a ginormous charity out in the US, and their mission is to keep people safe and keep people prepared for times of sort of natural disasters and any kind of sort of impact on their lives. So they're very big on sort of first aid delivery. They're quite big in healthcare, and they're very big in disaster preparedness. And this was a product we built for the disaster preparedness team. So out in the US, they have earthquakes, they have tornadoes, they have hurricanes, they have severe flooding. They get really severe weather. You know, they always kind of laugh about us in the UK. We think we have bad weather, and you know, flooding isn't to be sniffed at, but it genuinely isn't anything like the kind of stuff that those guys have to deal with. And the problem they had was that they were the way they were keeping people safe. This was back in 2012, so 8 years ago now. God, 8 years. Yeah, back in 2012, the problem they had was that with a hurricane, you're not entirely sure where a hurricane is going to hit. You've got a pretty good idea, but it can cover from when it first becomes a problem that you know it's going to hit. You're still a good week or two off it actually landing, which is good because it means that you've got time to prepare people for it. What's bad is you don't know exactly where it's going to land. And what they were doing back in 2012 was they were printing out loads of leaflets and things like that, and then going and distributing them to a town or to a part of the city that they thought would get hit. And then the hurricane, the weather changes, so it's going to hit further up the coast, and then they'd have to go and print a load more out. So it's a hugely inefficient and expensive way of doing it. Mobile phone in people's hands became very around 2012. It was really starting to become ubiquitous. So you know, we were like, well, we know where people are. We can deliver them the message directly. And from the initial, I won't go into all too much about the technical stuff, because what I'm interested in more with this case study is the process that we went through. So from the initial conversation that we had with the disaster team to having the app in the store took us 6 weeks. So 6 weeks for anybody that's kind of familiar with building software applications is a hugely speedy turnaround to get something actually into the App Store. For a client like the Red Cross, a huge corporate, well, not corporate, but they're a huge, they employ about 10,000 people, just to give you an idea of the sort of size of them. And then about 250,000 volunteers. Big old organisation, and we got a product for them from inception to the App Store in 6 weeks, which was amazing. And it wasn't, you know, when we delivered it, wasn't the most robust, wasn't the, you know, it wasn't completely on brand. I'm sure if it had gone through all the layers of stakeholder management that most things have to go through, it probably would have been held up. But we managed to get it through very quickly, got it through in 6 weeks. And it was very, very lucky that we did, because the week after it went live into the App Store, Hurricane Sandy hit. So Hurricane Sandy is still the biggest hurricane that's hit the east coast of America. And when Hurricane Sandy hit, the app over that weekend got downloaded 250,000 times. in 2 days and was #1 in the App Store. And we managed to send out, we managed to keep all of those people that had downloaded the app safe and aware of what was going to hit. So we sent alerts out to them, explaining to them what they needed to keep themselves safe in terms of the hurricane. Then off the back of that, an unexpected bonus of having the app was, we now could tell the people what they needed to do as the situation continued. So this was a benefit that the American Red Cross didn't realise they were going to have. Again, was deliver leaflets beforehand, then they would set up shelters, and they would have to put notice boards around the towns and cities where the hurricane had hit to tell people where these shelters were. Whereas we could tell people where their nearest shelter was directly and keep that going. And that was a function of the app that we literally built on the fly in the sort of weeks afterwards. So we were doing, it was incredible work that we did. It was, we were acting very fast. We were responding to the situation as we went, and we were able to very quickly iterate on the application and make that a hugely valuable tool for the American Red Cross. And they've since invested in that app, and where it is now, it's been downloaded around the globe. It's now about 20 odd million users. Last year we sent out, what was it, about 250 million alerts to people, keeping them safe, keeping them secure, making sure they were safe in times of natural disasters. So that's something that we got out in 6 weeks, that 8 years later is a very different product, very robust. It's the only platform that didn't go down during Hurricane Harvey a couple of years ago, which is something I'm quite proud of. So, you know, a hugely sort of successful product that we got off the ground in 6 weeks. And it was largely because the team that we were dealing with basically did it all under the radar. And to be honest, the top brass at the American Red Cross didn't really know what a mobile app was, so it could just fly through. And that's how we got the success that we did with Hurricane. So that was that's a really successful project. What I'm going to do now is just quickly talk about another, and I promise there is a point to this. This isn't just me going on about our great products for the Red Cross. There is a. We also do the blood donor app for the Red Cross. So this is an app that allows people to book appointments to go and donate blood. In the States, you donate blood to the Red Cross, and then they provide it to the hospitals. And they had a real problem. This was 2015. 2014. We first spoke to them. They had a real problem around blood donations and making the drives efficient, because basically what they were doing, they'd phone someone up, spam away, and you know, keep nagging them on the phone, and then people would just say they'll go to the appointment and not turn up. So we put the power in the user's hand, let you book your own appointments. We show them a lovely blood journey at the back of it, which shows the impact of their donation and helps them to repeat the process. Again, hugely successful app. We've done really well with it. You can see some great numbers there. So we've had 5.25 million appointments since we've launched the app. It's their biggest throughput of appointments to the donations. We won a Webby for it, so we were kind of, you know, feted in the press. It was all fantastic. What we actually did though was the app took from inception to getting it live 2 years. So it was 2 years of basically pissing about, going through stakeholder management, going through brand, going through all the different layers that we had to go through to be able to start the app, and then to build it out and to get it into people's hands. So there's a lot of messing around. And during that time, they sell the blood to the hospital, so it's a fundraising thing for them. We've estimated that cost them about $22 million. So all of that messing about, their brand teams and their procurement teams and all the different teams we work with, ended up costing them a lot of money. So it's great and it works brilliantly, but going through that entire process, you know, you've got to look at the sunken cost of it, because by that time, for smaller organisations at the moment, you haven't got time to do that. You can't spend 2 years working out what the right thing to do is, because someone else is going to do it in 6 weeks. There's a real interesting, different kind of mindset you have when you're trying to recover out these situations and get technology in people's hands as quickly as you can. So there's kind of 3 key points to this. When we look at those 2 different projects and look at the different things that happened there, there's kind of, we've sort of identified there's 3 sort of key ways that you can do this, and 3 ways that any organisation can innovate. So the first one is that to do real innovation, you've got to collaborate. You can't do it internally. You're not going to find the right way of doing it internally. Any kind of large organisation that is trying to innovate, you need to let the innovation team go out and look at the rest of the world, because whichever way you sort of look at it, when you're internally focused and you're using people that have worked in an organisation for a long time, you come up against the same old barriers again and again and again. So it is a case of collaborating as much as you can with other organisations and opening stuff up. And that collaborative and open working is really key. So when we look at the 2 teams we worked with, the first team we worked with, it was like 2 or 3 guys. We worked really closely with them, and they sort of trusted us to crack on and do it, and they were sort of happy with that. They kept us very separate from their IT teams and their technical teams, and just let us get on with it. Whereas the second group, when we did the product, fairly necessary, because there is quite a lot of sensitive data involved with healthcare records and stuff like that you have to be careful with. We were much more kind of treated as, rather than a partnership, it was much more a client agency relationship. So it's a really key one. If you want to get stuff done quickly, you've got to collaborate and you've got to trust external partners to get on and do it, because they will just be able to crack on. Then you've got that project or that team has then got to have quite a lot of agility. They've got to be able to just get on with it and do it, because the types of, if you want to get something to market quickly enough, you've got on the fly. They won't always be right, but you've got to be able to do it without going through the standard layers of stakeholder management that you would have to with normal projects, if you like. And that does mean procurement hate it, a brand tends to hate it, marketing teams might not be too pleased with it either. And you're going to annoy a lot of people within the organisation because you're going to bypass them. But if you want the thing out there quickly, you kind of have to do that. It's a shame. But what will happen is you might annoy them on the way up there. But if you get the right product out there and the product works, then it's fine. Nobody minds if it's a success. And if it's quickly enough that you don't have a sunken cost fallacy of spending 2 years on something, it not working, and then you constantly battling to make it work. So agility is really key, and that's agility of decision making, and that largely comes from independence. And that brings me to the last piece, and probably I would say this is kind of the most important one, I think, is you need what I would call a silverback in the organisation. And that is somebody that sits at a high enough level within that organisation that will back you and that will allow you to do that. So they're the people, they won't necessarily be directly involved with a project. It's usually like a CIO or a CTO or something like that, at that kind of level that can stand at a board and say, no, keep your hands off, and no, procurement, we're doing this and we're just getting on with it. So really, really important person to have in the organisation that backs the concept. So, I don't know anyone out there that is at that level. It is down to you to sort of to back these quick, innovative technical projects within your organisation. And it's really funny. This is as I said, we kind of this is a slightly slimmed down version of a deck that I do quite a lot with innovation teams at organisations, and it was quite good in a way to go through the process of thinking back. When we were going through COVID care, are we doing this? Are we dog fooding this properly? Is this something we should do? And we had a project that we had been working on for the University of Bristol. And it was going along a similar line where we were looking at how we could build an application that was going to engage with their students and was going to take them on a journey through their years at university. And it was what we had sort of spec'd out and designed, and it had taken a good few months to do it because it was going to be hooking into a whole range of different platforms and systems that the University of Bristol had, lots of legacy stuff. We'd gone through a whole design process of doing it, and then COVID happens, and we're going through lockdown, and it was like, guys, we can't be delivering something 2021. Like, you know, we were looking at spring term next year. Too late, can't do it by then. We need something now. We need it quick. So we revised the whole thing, and we pushed out it took us. We got it out. It was about a 7-week build in the end, and it was a pack that the students that were joining the University of Bristol or not joining, the case would be because of COVID. You've got the remote, much higher percentage of people students working remotely, and they were really, really keen to keep that same sort of engagement and keep the that initial freshers week, if you like, that sort of the engagement and sense of belonging that a student has, that's so important to a student's life. They wanted to keep that, but they knew they had to do it digitally. So we rejigged the whole thing to just be based around that. And we got it out there, and it was one of those where and we're working on it all the time now to keep it up to date and keep it going. But the engagement with it was absolutely through the roof. So if we look at the numbers that we were looking at getting, we were looking for 20% of the student body that would be engaging with the app. And we've actually got, it's over 50% now of the student body, and that's including existing students, which was a big surprise for us. We thought this was just going to be for freshers, have engaged with the app, have used it, and continue to use it on a daily basis. So that's a really good sort of kick up the arse for us, actually, because we are a different organisation to the one that built that app in 2012. But you've got to act fast and you've got to act quickly. And we had those different things. So we had the CIO of the university backed the whole thing, pushed it through procurement, kept the marketing guys at arm's length, and now we're starting to engage with those people. But to get the initial thing out, Keith was able to keep everybody at arm's length and let us just get on with it, which we did, and we've had great results for it. So there's that's an example of the app. So as I said, the sort of key stuff for this is that collaboration, being agile, and then having someone at the top of the organisation that can really help and support.